Meet the Steller's jay. What a bird! You know, at the moment he does have a bit of a problem. It's winter and food is scarce. The garden bird table is a lifeline for this jay. Only dozens of other birds are making the most of this feast. So the food is not going to last very long. But our Steller's jay here has a very clever plan. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it was downright devious. A red-shouldered hawk. It's the neighbourhood's top predator. Just the sound of its distinctive call sends all these birds scattering. The jay knows this, and it's about to do something that I've never seen or heard before. One jay has learned to pull off a pitch-perfect copy of the hawk's call. With the other birds tricked, he's got all of the food to himself. Look at that. That's nature at its most devious. And it turns out the sneaky Steller's jay isn't the only one tricking other animals to get itself a meal. All across the world, animals face the same dilemma. Find food or die. It really is that simple. Of course, there's no guarantee of where their next meal is coming from. So what can animals do to tip the balance in their favour? Would they lie, cheat and deceive one another just to get an advantage, just to survive? Oh, come on. Of course they would. Join me as I meet the world's sneakiest animals who will do whatever it takes to grab themselves a meal. The rainforest. Where a supremely sneaky animal faces a real challenge. The one thing that's apparent in a rainforest like this is that you're surrounded by insects. Just listen. There's a vast diversity of these animals living here. Which would make you think that if you were an insect predator, you'd have things pretty much your own way. But I've got to tell you, that isn't necessarily so. Lightning fast and agile, flying insects are some of the hardest things to catch on the planet. Though one thing is guaranteed to attract their attention. Flowers. They draw in insects from far and wide with their promise of nectar and pollen. And one predator exploits this to the full. Meet the mantis. Or to give it its full name, the orchid mantis is very aptly named too. Look at it, its whole body is the perfect mimic of a flower. To fool its prey, this entire animal's body is sculpted into a deceitful disguise. Combined with pin-sharp vision and a ninja-fast strike, it makes this mantis a very deadly ambush predator. But you know, even with cover as good as this, the pressure is on. This mantis is sub-adult at the moment, which means that it's got to be right on top of its game. It's got to kill something every few days or it will simply starve to death. The problem is, the mantis relies upon an insect visiting the specific flower that it's sitting on to make a strike. It's a waiting game, which could take days. Ever since Victorian naturalists first discovered this insect, there's been a suspicion that there's something more going on. They suspected that the mantis was doing more than just waiting around in a clever disguise. Its strike rate was just too high. So could the mantis somehow be attracting insects in its own right? James O'Hanlon is an expert in orchid mantis behaviour, and he's discovering there's far more to this predator than first meets the eye.
We have a simple experiment set up. We have 2 posts in the ground. On our first post, we have a flower. Our second post, a small mantis. And what we're going to do is watch and see how many of the insects that are buzzing around here fly up and have a look at each of our posts. So, which one do you want to watch?
Well, I'm going to gamble. I'm going to go with the mantis. Give me the notebook. The flower is certainly attracting attention. Come on, mantis. That's a visit.
Yeah, that definitely.
That was a visit. Excellent. Right, I'm off the mark here. After a slow start, and another, the mantis is making headway. Oh, did you see that?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I've not been watching your flower, but the mantis is doing rather well.
Pretty impressive.
It is, but aside from the count, we've already seen something absolutely remarkable, because these bees are visiting the mantid like that, and it's just caught another one. The mantis is attracting insects independently of your flower. It doesn't need your flower. Those bees that are coming up to it think that it's a flower.
I've done this experiment over and over and over again. More often than not, our little mantis is actually more attractive than a real flower.
The mimic is better than the thing that it's mimicking. And that is absolutely astonishing. So what exactly is going on here? Well, we need to know how insects see the rainforest. Their eyes are highly sensitive to certain wavelengths of light, So to them, flowers glow like beacons in the jungle. James measured the brightness of these flowers and compared them to the mantis. And remarkably, he's discovered that this dazzling fake in the forest is a brighter stimulus than any flower. Tricked into visiting a deadly trap, there's no escape. The deception at work here is aggressive mimicry, in that the mantis is adopting a disguise, in this case a flower, to lure in its prey, and that is the key. It's the mantis and not the flower which is bringing in the insects which it can then predate. Not only is this creature exquisitely beautiful, it's remarkably ruthless and, in my opinion, totally amazing. Across the world, animals have adapted their bodies in extreme ways to lure their prey. In Hawaii, the carnivorous caterpillar has morphed into a predatory plant. The bioluminescent bait of the deep-sea anglerfish tempts its prey. And in caves in New Zealand, the glowworm, with its luminous tail and sticky secretions, has created a tantalizing trap. This veritable rogues gallery is the result of millions of years of artful adaptation, all in aid of catching the next meal. But changing the way you look isn't the only way of setting a trap. Out on the prairie, a new tenant has moved into a deserted den. A burrowing owl. And she has chicks, just a few weeks old, and they're all hungry. They eat insects, and lots of them. The female spends every waking hour trying to find enough food. And the stakes? Well, they're really high. You see, 96% of all chick deaths are down to starvation. But luckily, there's a sneaky solution to this problem. Cattle graze across these grasslands. And what goes in must come out. Baked by the sun, the cow dung is ready for collection. Could it really be dung for dinner? Of course not. But it could be considered a rather devious dinner party. amongst some unsuspecting guests. Little do they know, it's them who are on the menu. Is where it gets really clever, because little insects attract bigger prey. Superb. You see, instead of flying for miles to find food, now she just has to walk a few meters. And it's rich pickings for the whole family. All thanks to this very crafty trap. Duping your dinner to come to you clearly has its advantages. But most top predators need to actively seek out their prey to satisfy their needs. That can be a real challenge, because these prey animals have highly effective defense strategies. But what if a predator knew what its prey's defense strategy was? And what if it used that actual strategy against that animal when it was hunting it? Well, there is one animal that's learned to do exactly that, and it lives out here. The killer whale. This marine mammal lives in a world of sound. Because visibility is limited underwater, killer whales use a series of sounds to communicate, navigate, and to hunt. And it's during a hunt where they use sound in a very sneaky way. Scientist Volker Dieck is an expert in killer whale acoustics, and he's recorded some astonishing underwater audio. I'm joining him in a specialist sound studio to hear his discoveries.
It's beautiful. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. This is a group of 50 animals tracking a whole school of herring.
Herring live in huge groups. When threatened by predators, their defensive strategy is to shoal tightly together. The confusing, coordinated movements of the school make it harder for predators to single out and pick off individuals. Herring are perfect prey for killer whales, but how are they going to catch them? Volker has recorded something quite remarkable. A strange sound that killer whales only make whilst they're hunting herring.
Now listen carefully.
That's amazing. So basically there was a lot of clicking and then a single loud whistle.
That loud sound is what we call a herding call. The herding call is a very unusual sound for killer whales. First of all, it's a relatively low frequency sound. The other thing is it's a very, very loud sound.
For a fish, a low frequency sound at very high volume is extremely dangerous. That sound can become a weapon. Let me explain how it works. Look at this. Here, a glass is being exposed to a very loud frequency of sound. And when you crank up the volume, something incredible happens. You can see that glass flexing. Because we're not implying that the whales are bursting the fish with sound.
No.
Perhaps just making them wobble.
We think it's used to do something to the herring, to change the herring's behaviour.
It seems that the gut-wrenching herding calls panic the herring and trigger their defence tactics. They school closely together. Other predators couldn't handle this. But this is exactly what the killer whales want. They've set a trap. With the fish in a tight ball, they have no room for manoeuvre. The killer whales deliver devastating tail swipes with the force of an exploding grenade. And then the whales feast on the stunned fish. Sound here is being used as a deceptive weapon. These killer whales know that by producing that frequency of sound at that volume, they can modify the behaviour of the herring. Effectively, they can use their own defence behaviour against them, so the whales can feed more efficiently. That is pretty clever. But off the coast of Alaska, killer whales have a bigger challenge. Here, some of their main prey are seals and sea lions, which live along the rocky shores. But these animals are much more intelligent than herring, and they've got exceptional hearing. So they can detect any calls the killer whales make, and then take evasive action. It would seem that the seals have the upper hand. But then, how can this happen? Volker's latest recording has the answer.
Here we go.
Volker recorded a pod of 3 killer whales tracking a seal.
Now listen carefully. This is the sound of a male harbour seal, a vocal display that it uses to attract other females.
So that's the seal, and the killer whale can hear that.
It certainly can.
The hunt is on, and Volker's recording reveals something extraordinary.
And now I'm just going to increase the volume here.
But there's no clicking.
No clicking.
And no whoops.
No, this is a group of 3 animals, and they're doing all of this completely silently, with no calls, no echolocation, nothing at all. Because of course the seal would hear that.
They've gone into radio silence, basically.
Absolutely. Mum is the word when it comes to hunting for these guys. And only when they're within striking distance do they speed up. And hitting the seal and grabbing it.
That was it, getting...
That's it.
Wow. It's quite profound, isn't it? You know, the dissociation, just hearing the sound of this event, that animal being killed.
Mm-hmm.
It's gruesome, but can we hear it again?
And that poor seal was trying to attract the female, and instead it attracted its predator.
So this, you see, is a form of acoustic camouflage. The killer whales are consciously being quiet so that they can sneak up on their prey. The trick to the success is not making any noise at all. That's the clever bit. That's the devious bit. Across the world's oceans, killer whales and other large marine predators also use an artful visual ploy to help them hunt. Take the great white shark. They need stealth and surprise to launch an attack. The seas are vast. Great white sharks can't hang around simply waiting for prey to come to them. They've got to seek that prey out. They've got to actively go hunting. But underwater, in the open ocean, there is nowhere to hide. So how can a creature as large as a great white shark conceal itself whilst it's looking for that prey? Well, it seems they've come up with a pretty crafty solution. A shark's body coloration is entirely deliberate. Dark on top, light underneath. It's called counter-shading. Viewed from above, the dark skin of the shark's back blends eerily into the shadowy ocean depths. Seen from below, its pale underside matches the lighter water near the surface. For the illusion to really work though, the shark has to disappear when it's viewed from the side, and this is where it gets really clever. Let's put counter-shading to the test. Here we have a sphere, uniform in colour, it's white in fact. And over here, another sphere, but this one is painted dark grey on top and it's white underneath. It looks just like a shark. In the ocean, light from the sun always falls from above, so let's replicate that. Immediately, a shadow forms on the uniform sphere. In fact, it's the shadow that's cast by the top of that sphere itself. Look at it. It stands out a mile against that backdrop. The other sphere is very different. The top light falls on the grey and it's balanced by the shadow that forms underneath. Now let's be honest, it doesn't disappear, but it becomes much more two-dimensional, much flatter. And if I were prey and this were predator, it would be a lot more difficult to see. That's the secret of counter-shading. And that is the secret of the shark's success. It's a devious design that sharks have used to hunt their prey for millennia. And they're not the only ones. There's counter-shading in penguins. Sailfish have it. Even humpback whales. It's smart, and it works. Deceptive strategies like these give predators the edge in a hunt. But other animals have a very different problem. To get the food they need to survive, they have to compete with others of their own species. And that's when things can get very sneaky indeed. Autumn, and change is in the air. This time of year is also critical, as animals are preparing for the winter, and one species' survival is inextricably linked to these: conkers, sweet chestnuts, hazelnuts and acorns, because at the moment they're quite literally going nuts for nuts. Grey squirrel. This little nut is packed full of energy. Carbohydrate, fat, protein, all in all there's somewhere between 5 and 10 calories in here, which means that a cold, hungry squirrel will need about 20 of these to get through a winter's day. It's a very valuable commodity. So, if you come along to a park where squirrels are used to people, you might be able to tempt them to take it out of your hand. Come on then. Come on. Come on. Come on. Magic. But that nut is not for eating today. Squirrels will cache around 3,000 nuts in different locations for the lean times ahead. And incredibly, they'll remember where up to 90% of them were buried. There's no denying that that is remarkable. But there's a problem here in the park. You see, thieves are lurking. After all, why bother to find your own nuts and then hide them when you can nick someone else's? Whilst our squirrel buries nuts essential for his survival, he's being watched. Nuts safely stored, the squirrel departs the scene. And the onlooker moves in for the steal. Undeniably devious behaviour. So is there anything that these nut-hoarding squirrels can do to throw the thieves off of the scent? Well, it turns out that there is, because they've got some sneaky strategies of their own. Grey squirrels will dig up nuts they've already buried and then rebury them in a different place, throwing thieves off the scent. But I've got to tell you, it gets better, because there is one situation where our squirrel exhibits true deceptive genius, and it's something that will be familiar to anyone who's been in the audience with a street magician. You know the score. The ball goes into one cup, the other two are empty. The trick is to work out where the ball goes. The key to fooling his audience is timing and misdirection. Just like the magician, the grey squirrel has mastered sleight of hand, so now it's time to see deception in action. Okay, here's our squirrel, nut in mouth, poised to berry. And here is the thief. He moves closer for a better view. But look, does our squirrel know that he's being watched? Either way, he carries on. From the thief's point of view, these are the actions of a squirrel burying a nut. But wait, it turns out that our squirrel has been faking it. When he spotted the thief, he opted for plan B, misdirection. The thief has only seen what our squirrel wanted him to see. He carried on digging, but he didn't deposit the nut, the ultimate sleight of hand. Oblivious to the trick, the thief heads towards the freshly dug hole only to find a freshly dug hole. Foiled. And with the coast clear, our squirrel is free to bury his nut in a new location, known only to him. For these squirrels, this park is a hotbed of theft and deception, and they're pulling every trick they can out of the book to find their nuts and then hide them. But here is the really interesting thing. They're not fooling another species, they're tricking one another. This is a case of deception and then counter-deception evolving at the same time. And the strategies that the hoarder and the pilferer have come up with make these little rodents one of the most successful mammals on our planet. So that is not nuts. That's pure success. Sleight of hand helps sneaky squirrels get one up on each other. But there is one animal that uses devious and far darker tactics on the most vulnerable of their own kind. A millionaire's playground off the coast of California. And a male sea otter is cruising the harbour. To get his next meal, he's got a really despicable plan. It involves a female sea otter and her pup. The pup is just old enough to accompany her mother on foraging trips, giving the male an opportunity. He picks the perfect moment. Whilst the female is fishing, her precious pup is all alone, at the surface, and vulnerable. When the mother surfaces, she hears the cries of her youngster. Our cunning male has kidnapped the baby. He knows the female will come to the rescue, and the ransom is always the same. In an underwater exchange, the female gives up the food she's just found to the male, and the pup is released unharmed. This is called hostage behaviour, and it's surprisingly common. A deliberate manipulation of female otters, all to get food. Theft is sneaky, but ultimately it's a successful strategy. But just how far are animals prepared to go? Now, it's one thing for animals to deceive, cheat and steal from one another to get themselves a decent meal. But I've heard about something else that might be even more remarkable. Oh yes, they're cheating us humans. I give you the world's ultimate cheeky monkey, the long-tailed macaque. The Temple of Uluwatu, home to a remarkable troop of these monkeys. With over 300 macaques here, they need a lot of food. But temple offerings and tourist scraps just aren't enough for these monkey mobsters. No, they've got their eyes on far more nutritious fare, and what they're doing to get it is downright criminal. There are plenty of monkeys about, but to see what they're getting up to, I need to blend in. I need to disguise myself. As a tourist, the camera is absolutely de rigueur. Sunglasses? What about this? Everyone seems to be using these things. Just not me, though. I think I'll just stick to the old mobile phone. No, going too far.
Attention to the visitors, please be careful in bringing sunglasses, hats, jewelry and other valuables that can be taken by the monkeys. Thank you for your attention.
These monkeys are expert thieves. Here we go. Oh, and there you go. Brazen, audacious. They've worked out exactly how to get what they want. Oh dear. It's like taking candy from children, it really is. You're a bit of a gangster, aren't you? You fancy yourself as a bit of a sunglasses hitman. Oh. Look at him, look. Here he goes. I've been undercover for about an hour. The monkeys have been stealing all sorts of stuff. Flip-flops, sunglasses. Managed to hang on to my own. People's hats. I'm told they even nick their iPhones. The interesting thing is, though, They're taking all of this stuff which is valuable to us humans, but they're not taking any food. Well, obviously I spoke too soon about my sunglasses. But this daylight robbery is still all about food, just not in the way that you'd ever expect. So to understand what they're up to, I'm giving them an irresistible opportunity. You see, these monkeys want something in return for my phone. They're notorious for one thing: holding people to ransom. Okay, he's got my phone. And there is a system by which I may be able to do this. Bartering. Okay, that's what it thinks of peanuts. Let's try something a little bit more valuable to it. Maybe a bag of bananas. Doesn't seem particularly interested in the bananas either, does he? The last prize that I have is this. Protein in the form of eggs. If anything's going to get my phone back, it's this. Yes! Yes. This is absolutely incredible. You see, these monkeys are stealing the valuables that they know that we want back, and they're using them to barter with us for food. They won't give up their loot, not until they're offered the specific food that they want, often the fare with the highest nutritional value. As negotiation and bartering are so extraordinary in the animal world, Jean-Baptiste and his research team are studying how this complex deception develops. But this bartering is very, very rare. It occurs only here, perhaps another couple of places on Earth. Why here and nowhere else?
Well, the main hypothesis with this group is that it might have emerged from an inventor. That's usually
one animal.
Probably. That's how behavioral traditions typically emerge. It's obviously nutritionally beneficial. They get really something out of it. So in this particular population, it spread.
So young monkeys here are able to learn by looking at their elders, particularly the older males, which are the most proficient at this.
With adult males, the entire procedure becomes very fast, very successful on both sides, and of course the monkey gets its favorite food, and the token, the item, is returned in and generally in good conditions, but not always. Not always.
One of them had to say, "Ate my sunglasses, it chewed them up." But that was a youngster, and it took them off my head without me even noticing. So very adept at stealing, but then it dashed up a tree and ate them, so it hadn't learned to barter yet.
It takes time and practice to become a good player at this particular game, definitely.
Monkeys are intelligent creatures. Like us, they have the ability to learn, to adapt their feeding behaviours to get the best from any situation. And they can outwit us in a flash, even some of us who should know better. Look at this one, look. This one's really got something valuable this time. He's got a purse. Oh no, it's your purse. It's your purse. I didn't realise it was one of our team's purse. How could you lose that? You know what they're up to. They've got the purse. And the money. Look at that. That's the price of carelessness at the temple. Being amongst these.
I hope so.
comes to getting food, these monkeys have got it all sewn up. Superb. Absolutely superb. This has to be one of the most fascinating and complex pieces of deceitful behaviour that we've seen. And you know what I really like about it? For once, these cheeky monkeys have turned the tables on us humans. It's us that's being held to ransom. Of course, we love their anarchic behaviour, even when we're the victims ourselves. It really is quite wonderful. In the case of this remarkable monkey heist, we are willing to be part of the deception. Yet most animals wouldn't tolerate being tricked time and time again for their food. That's certainly a problem that animals that practice deception face, because if they want their con to work in the long term, they need to control it, to regulate it, to ensure that the victim is blissfully unaware that it's ever being had. It sounds simple, but it's not. It's something that's very, very difficult to do. But there is one animal that's perfected the art. Here in South Africa, there's an animal that uses the most extraordinary trick that I've ever heard of to get itself a meal. I give you the one and the only drongo. The ultimate hustler in the Hunger Games. He's one brazen bird. Now, it might look warm and sunny here, but it's winter and times are tough. The flying insects that the drongo usually eats just aren't around in these low temperatures. The only grubs and insects here live underground, and other animals are far better equipped to dig them up than our drongo. So how is he going to get this food? This exquisite bird has evolved a very devious strategy to deal with just this problem. You see, its very survival rests on a knife edge, so it's turned to a life of crime. And although it may not look it, the drongo here is a con artist of the highest order. In the world of the con, an elaborate hustle plays out between the player, the drongo, and the victim of the con, the mark. And the mark, in this case, is another species of bird, a sociable weaver. And they feed on the ground using their large, powerful bills to dig up the food. But out in the open, they are vulnerable to predators. And that's where the drongo comes in. So what is the drongo offering the weaver? It's offering it something that's the singularly most important thing for a small bird like this. Protection. When trouble looms, the drongo lets the weavers know about it with an alarm call. When the danger's gone, he gives them an all-clear call. It looks to me as if the first stage of the con has been established, in the sense that they're clearly trusting the drongo's call. So far, so good. But now let's see how this hustle actually plays out. With the drongo on lookout duty, the weavers spend less time worrying about predators and more time foraging, digging up that vital food. The drongo's alarm call, and that means danger. But all is not what it seems. That alarm call was in fact a fake. There is no predator. With the weavers gone, the drongo eats all the food they've just dug up. And then he gives the all clear call. Within minutes, the drongo is back on duty, and the weavers are none the wiser. Now he's got to keep his side of the bargain. He's got to protect them from real predators, or they'll get wise to his protection racket. But in fact, the drongo's con gets much more sophisticated than this. The drongo's con routine is actually so effective that they've learned to employ it upon many other species of animal, including these guys, meerkats. They're much smarter than the weavers, so the drongo needs to raise his game. Meerkats have their own lookout. It's one that they entrust with their lives. Yet, if there are predators about, a second pair of eyes is always very useful, and the drongo can exploit this. That food has caught his eye. He makes a fake alarm call. It should send them running. But no, the meerkats aren't fooled that easily. He needs another plan. And what the drongo does now is really sneaky. From out of the blue, it's the sound of a meerkat alarm call. But that was no meerkat. No, that was our drongo. The sneaky devil has switched tactics, and by mimicking the meerkat's own alarm call, he tricks them completely and gets all the food for himself. The drongo is the ultimate con artist. Depending on the situation, he decides which of his repertoire of fake calls to use. And this means his targets never get wise to his tricks. When it comes to finding food, this little bird has pulled off the most phenomenal con, to the extent that if it thinks for just a moment that the mark is going to figure out the trick, it changes it to guarantee success. And that you've got to admit, is remarkable, and surely makes this one of the most devious animals on our planet. And I, for one, have developed a real admiration for the drongo. What a bird! What a bird! So, we've met the extraordinary animals that will lie, cheat, and steal their way to their next meal. Sneaky strategies that ensure that they'll live to see another day. Next time, sex and lies in the mating game. We meet the animals tricking others to win a mate and then raise their young. The seductive sneaks, the cheats, the love rats. These animals definitely don't play by the rules.
And that's next Thursday at 8, and Chris Packer reveals what sneaky abilities he'd like to steal from animals. Head online to bbc.co.uk/TV blog. Well, it's time for a dancehall revolution. Bolton could once again be in a whirl. If anyone shows up, you make me feel like dancing. Follows next here.